This is the right one.
So after that, we want to check our meter, make sure all our valves are closed, and everything is good. After you notify the customer, you want to identify the unit. You want to identify the serial number, the make and the model. So this is the Wilkins 375XL RP, 3/4 inch, and serial number is B378223. All that stuff needs to be, or all that information needs to be on your test sheet. Okay? After you have notified, identified, and inspected and observed, you want to go ahead and get ready to set up for test. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to flush your test cocks. On this particular device here, you must flush your test cocks in reverse order, because if you drop that pressure on the front side of the check valve assemblies on the high pressure side, your relief valve will open. So you'll need to open test cock number 4 first, and you need to leave it running. That allows flow through the assembly and keeps that pressure equalized through the assembly. So you would open 3, leave it running, open test cock 2, leave it running, and then open test cock number 1. Then you would just close them in the reverse order. 1, 2, 3, and then 4. Okay? Once you get those flushed, you're going to set your hoses up. Your high hose or your red hose will be attached to test cock number 2. Your low hose or your green hose will be connected to test cock number 3. Okay? Once you get those connected, you'll open test cock number 3, the low hose first, and then open your low bleed. You want to leave that open, and then open test cock number 2, the high hose, and then open your high bleed. Okay? What I'm doing is flushing out any air or anything that's in assembly or that's in my meter. Okay? You will then close your high side bleed valve first. Let the meter peg out all the way to the end, and then close your low side bleed. Okay? So what we're going to do here is we're going to wait. We're going to let the needle stabilize, let it stop. All right, everything looks good. Then we're going to close shut off valve number 2. All right, 2 things I'm looking for here. I'm looking for that needle to stay stabilized. I'm not writing any information down here. I'm just observing that check valve number 1 is operating and that it is holding. Again, we're not writing anything down on our test sheet. But I am looking at the line pressure. We have about 90 PSI. It's on the line pressure gauge. It's on the top. And I will write that on my test sheet. 90 PSI in the line pressure section. Okay? So the first test I'm going to conduct here is I'm going to get my relief valve opening point. So I'm going to open my high side control valve 1 full turn. Then I'm opening the low side control valve no more than 1/4 of a turn. If you have to open this valve more than 1/4 of a turn, that means you have flow through your assembly that your shut off valve number 2 is leaking. So you shouldn't have to open it no more than 1/4 of a turn. So just 1/4 of a turn. You want to place your hand underneath the relief valve opening because you need to be watching your needle as it drops. You want to get that relief valve opening point. You want it to be pretty accurate. So when you start feeling water in your hand, right there at about 2.4, okay? So you want to close that low side control valve. And you want to write that 2.4 down in your relief valve opening point on your test sheet. All right, so we got 2.4. They're required to open at 2.0, so that's a good relief valve opening point. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to conduct a back pressure test on check valve number 2. So with that high vent valve, or the high side control valve still open, the low's closed, I'm going to just crack open my vent valve, get some airflow or some water flowing through my vent valve or my vent hose. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and attach that to test cock number 4. All right. Then we're going to close that vent valve. Then we're going to open that number 4 test cock. We're going to open our low bleed, reestablish our pressure in our meter, let that meter peg out, close that low side bleed valve, let the needle stabilize. Okay. Once it's stabilized, then we're going to crack this vent valve open 1 full turn. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying back pressure on check valve number 2. So I'm routing water from the high pressure side hose on the high pressure side of the assembly, routing from the red hose through my meter, out of the back hose, and I'm driving check valve number 2 closed. I'm using that back pressure to push that or force that valve closed. Okay. Look at our meter here, it's not moving. That means check valve number 2 is holding tight against back pressure. So you want to mark that on your check valve number 2. It's just a check box, okay? It's a back pressure test held tight, okay? So once you've done that, now what I need to do is I need to get a differential reading for check valve number 1. So basically I'm in the same setup. I'm just going to open my low bleed, bleed my meter again, Allow the needle to peg out. I'm going to close that low bleed. Let my needle stabilize. And that is my check valve number 1 differential reading, which is 7.4. Okay? 7.4 is good because check valve number 1 has to see at 5.0 or higher, so that is a good reading. So that passes. So there's one more test that I have to do in this setup that I'm at right now is I want to check the tightness of shutoff valve number 2, make sure that it is holding tight. Because right now, again, as I said, we're bringing water from the high pressure side of the assembly through the red hose and out this back black hose. So I'm filling this gap between shutoff or check valve number 2 and shutoff valve number 2. I'm actually forcing water in there. So if there was a leaking shutoff valve number 2, that water that I'm actually pushing in there would be compensating for a leak. So basically all we do is we just come over here and we turn off that high side hose, basically cutting off that supply. And then we just observe our meter. Our meter stays still. That means shutoff valve number 2 is holding tight. Again, that is just a check box. It should be on your test sheet. Shutoff valve 2 held tight. Check that box. Okay? So that's it for this setup here. All right, we're going to move now to get our differential reading for check valve number 2. We're going to close all of our test clocks. Make sure all of our valves are closed on our meter. We're going to remove our test hose. We no longer need the black hose so we can lay it down. We're going to move the low pressure hose from test cock 3 to test cock 4. And we're going to move our hot side hose from test cock 2 to test cock 3. And we're going to bleed them in the same order as we did before. You're going to open test cock number 4, the low hose first. Open the low bleed, get water flowing through, leave it open. Open your high side, test cock number 3. Open the high bleed. Again, getting all that air out of the meter and out of the assembly. Close your high side bleed first. Let your meter peg out all the way. Then close your low side bleed. When the needle stops, as it does here at about 2.6, that is your check valve number 2 differential reading, 2.6. That is a good reading. Check valve number 2 is required to see at 1.0 or higher. So 2.6 is a good reading. So these numbers that we got on our test sheet now tell us that this assembly passed. That's a good test. So we'll then turn off all of our test cocks. Remove our test hoses. Restore pressure downstream to the customer. Open our meters, drain all the water out of it for transport. And that's it for this test.